I think the conversation we're going to have in this panel is very much about what's the journey between thinking and doing. How does one take an idea and actually implement it so it has a physical impact? What does it mean to embody a certain feeling? What does it mean to take a theoretical relationship and turn it into a physical relationship? So if you don't mind staying with me for 1 second here, and this is then going to be the sort of end to the introduction, and Jamie, you will continue. Why don't we start with preparing ourselves to take a deep breath, right? The idea is to see if we could locate this talk we're going to have in a slightly different position than the head and maybe also the sort of the laptop or iPad or whatever you're sitting with in your one of the two hands. So at the end of the talk, we might do another breath, right? So if you don't mind focusing here for a second, try to feel the chair at your back, under your bum. Feel the ground under your feet. Somebody just said that you were probably so stressed that you're used to these kind of small exercises. Try to think about that all the information you're going to be presented to primarily travels through your eyes into your brain. It very rarely actually travels down to your body. So just now think about if the journey from your eyes and ears actually does go through your body. It takes space in your body. You feel what you hear physically, and then again, you might store it, if you want, in the brain or in the body. Let's do that now with a breath. The breath, as we know, is an inhale and an exhale. So I'm going to ask you, when I say now, to do a slow inhale, and just sort of feel the kind of top of the inhale, where you're kind of full, and then imagine that the content of this DLD event is right there in that container, and then sort of exhale it again, and then we will start the panel. Are you ready to do that? So take a very good inhale now. Thank you. Jamie, you want to start?
Thank you. I feel like I have to do like having a gym or something. So my job, by the way, we have amazing artists here, so I'm not going to make a great visual presentation. I'll give you some facts. An early organization I found was called Data. We believe in a lot of these issues, the facts are our friends. People just don't know the information. And we're evidence-based activists at One. What is One? Bear with me a second. I'll give you some propaganda, if you don't mind, just so you know who we are, because I think that'll help us and help you help us figure out how we can take this campaign, which we hope to do together, to scale. This is our international patron, Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We're an advocacy organization, pure public policy advocacy organization. We campaign to get behind specific, practical, measurable actions that entrepreneurs, civil society activists have pioneered, piloted. We help get major finance behind them, often from the public sector, to take them to scale. So we're a grassroots advocacy campaigning organization, 200,000 more members than the 2.5 million you're told, just growing very rapidly. We're particularly focused on Africa, but not exclusively. We're non-partisan. We work with people from all sides and both sides of the Atlantic. And we work with incredible African leadership. We're not a grant-making organization. We don't give anyone money. We campaign for others to give money to others and help create policy space so the right innovations can go to scale. But we are not a grant-making organization. For some reason, that's often hard to explain. We don't give money to anyone. We're not asking for your money, we're asking for your voice. And we encourage your voice through innovative, creative campaigning. We have many sexy celebrity friends who do campaigns with us. We have apps for our activists who are connected and highly effective in changing government policy. We get our members to tweet the Bundeskanzleramt. Right now, Bill Gates is in Brussels with One. pushing European policymakers on a whole series of smart aid interventions, which we're helping with him to take to scale through European aid. Recently, a lot of our supporters tweeted the White House to get more money for vaccines, for the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations. As a result, that mechanism has over $4 billion with which it will save over 4 million lives in the next 4 years through simple childhood vaccinations. And we're trying to get this message about good news out there because there is this information deficit. It is hard to get that news out there. So we're interested in people's help to achieve that through the Living Proof campaign. And here's just some facts about some of the things that have happened, which it's paid for with your taxes, European and American tax dollars, and euros and dollars, and yet you often don't know about it. Why is that? There's incredible success that is being driven by people across Africa and the developing world with a little help from many of you, and yet you don't get to hear about it. You often hear about the bad stuff, and there are some failures in aid, but there's a lot of good news too. But above all, the purpose of all this smart aid is to get beyond aid, and that's why we're incredibly excited about working on this issue of energy, electricity, and energy poverty, because it enables us to enter a new narrative that gets away from the old aid debates of the past. So what is this challenge? Let's quickly cast it. I think you know many of these facts. There's quite a few facts here missing from this slide, but I think the key thing is there are a lot of people who do not get the stuff we take for granted on a daily basis. At this moment, dramatically, the lights are supposed to dim. We're not supposed to be able to see or hear anything because the lights are supposed to have been turned off, but apparently the bank upstairs wouldn't let us turn the lights off because they're so dependent, as are all of us, on this electricity we take for granted, which they do not have. And just imagine that if you can. Too many of us do not. We almost have an almost romantic idea about pre-electricity. It is not romantic at all. It stops that girl from doing her homework. It stops the vaccines from being taken to the clinics so the child could be vaccinated. It stops private sector employment in its tracks. It stops entrepreneurialism. It stops hope. It stops many things dead. And yet, it is amenable to fantastic decentralized, bottom-up, private sector-led innovations, solutions, which Africa is just waiting, and well, actually it's not waiting a whole, it's pioneering a hell of a lot of things, as we'll see here, but it's waiting for, if you like, a lot of people from Europe and America to spot the opportunity of getting behind, tackling the energy poverty crisis in Africa. Aha, that's where the facts were. I think one of the key things also, it's not just that they don't have access to this electricity and this energy. It is that the access which they do have is extremely dirty. It is killing people. It is in fact killing more people than malaria. The fumes, whether from kerosene or from cook stoves that are not clean, is a major cause of respiratory tract problems and death. So that is a hugely important part of this. And they also paying through the nose, 10 or 100-fold. The poorest pay far more for electricity than you or I do here. The poorest in Africa pay far more because they're having to take course to solutions which are extremely unsustainable. And it's holding back a hell of a lot of progress. But that's enough of the pity party. That's enough of the woe as us story of the past. This is the opportunity. Because the infrastructure has not been built, there's an opportunity to do something entirely new. And not only because it's not been built, but it's particularly well placed, the region of Sub-Saharan Africa, for renewable energy. For geothermal, hydro, solar, wind, it has huge untapped potential, as these statistics show. So, you know, where are you? Why aren't you getting into this? Why aren't you investing there? It has, as telecoms has already shown, fantastic leapfrogging potential. And here's some of the financing that's expected imminently. From 750 million only a couple of years ago, 3.6 billion latest figures, estimated to $60 billion by 2020. There's a hell of a lot being done. But a lot of it's at that kind of global public policy macro level. It's at the G20, it's at the G8, it's at the AU summit. That's good. It can create policy space. But it needs to be brought down to the solutions that really can make a difference on the ground. The EU is going to put a lot more money behind this. A lot of money is being mobilized through the trading mechanism that's used from carbon finance. Germany is already putting a lot of money into this and hopes Europe will follow behind. The World Bank has a major initiative called Lighting Africa, which is putting money behind solutions across the continent. So there's a huge amount of potential here. Norway is also heavily involved. And a lot, as I said, is already happening. In Kenya, the rural energy hubs with a German company are bottom of pyramid photovoltaic, battery charging, helping bring electricity to households across Kenya. There's, I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, Zonga Mblena Solar, which is bringing, again, renewable photovoltaic energy to electricity to people in small and medium-sized enterprises across Kenya, wind farms, geothermals in Kenya and in Tanzania, South Africa, Ghana. There's huge hydro potential, massive hydro potential in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Ethiopia. It's concentrated in these two countries, so that requires more regional integration across Sub-Saharan Africa. If that potential is going to be fully tapped, not just for those two countries, but for the whole continent. A lot of people are very excited about concentrated solar thermal in the Saharan region. Morocco is doing a lot there. Again, German companies are heavily involved in that. So there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of money getting involved, but a lot of it's public sector money that needs to be led by more innovation. There's more that could be done to incentivize the private sector, but there is something missing, which we do not also have. We don't have it either yet, which is the campaign that will engage the public in an exciting new push on this issue. I've been part of several very big campaigns which have gone from taking issues from the margins to the mainstream, from debt cancellation to on HIV/AIDS, on malaria. And what started as sort of marginal interventions went mainstream and saved millions of lives and transformed economies. And there is without question a huge potential to do exactly the same here in the area of energy poverty in Africa and do it in a new and different way. But we haven't finalized what this campaign could be. And hopefully, one practical action could be some collection of people who are here now from technology, from venture capital, some people in government, activists, could work together and take some solutions, such as those we're about to hear about from the other panelists, and help take them to scale. And I look forward to brainstorming with all of you here now and this evening over drinks, whatever, to try and take this to scale. So thank you very much. Those are just the quick facts and a quick overview and the 101 on the issue. I think...
Thank you so much, Jamie. Now we have actually Olafur's demonstration. As mentioned before, it's the light, and the light is here. Olafur.
Thank you, Hans. Am I on here? I'm supposed to touch the computer. I have, through making art, dealt with sun in various ways, sunlight, daylight, maybe more in particular with the relationship with light, and that's maybe also why I thought addressing how does light actually feel. Obviously light, being immaterial, is hard to contain and it's an abstract size. Nevertheless, light is also the tissue that creates a social, let's say, relationship, network. Any communication is going to be depending on light, actually physical light or light in the fiber optic and so on and so forth. Making art made me confident that light has a stronger force in the whole equation of causality in the world. And I guess this is how I started looking into how light can be a part of social entrepreneuring. Last year, I was lucky to be here at DLD with my friend and now my partner and colleague in this project that I'm calling Little Sun. My friend is here, Frederick, sitting at the front row, and he makes solar airplanes. And Frederick and I have since then, pretty much exactly since last year, decided to work on a little solar lamp. Let me get that little thing where I can push the slides forward. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Here it is. So only a few days ago, we finally got the homepage, the registration, the mock-ups, the relationships, the contracts, and everything together. So I'm here to present to you something which is very personal and also something that I hope will meet a frame of reference that the two other speakers are working within, namely being global. It's a company called Little Sun. This is the first time we talk about it in public, and it is a so-called small startup. The little sun is a tiny little solar chargeable lamp, and our goal is to make it so cheap that we can compete with kerosene or the petroleum lamps. I have a few more text-driven notes. The cost of light of kerosene is 325 times higher than the one of an incandescent bulb. Kerosene-based lighting is poor for reading and other tasks, and as you were updated for before, there's a number of benefits with this. The design is something we have tried out in various versions, and I want to share with you a little story, because in the beginning, of course, we started talking to different NGOs, public sectors, funding money, people who could take us from small scale to large scale. And interestingly, people would say, well, don't worry about the design, just make it work. And I mean, who cares about design in Africa? And every time we went to Africa to show it, they say, oh, it looks really boring, doesn't it? Why don't you make it really beautiful? And then we went to the private sector in let's say, where we work out of in Copenhagen, and say, oh, you have to make it look really nice. Of course it matters what it looks like. So there was that shift from understanding what type of NGO public money language was where we started, and where are we now with what does design actually mean. Something I could relate to as an artist. It is a bit more trivia. And only the last few months we have had our first prototypes, and we have been down in Ethiopia testing and trying and developing the lamp further. And this is pretty much where we are at now, and I want to share with you a few stories from that. This is, as you can see, Frederick, and I have the names. And I just think it's important to say here. This is Tigist and Sebeta. So Frederick is with Tigist and Sebeta. Oh, it's in the city of Sebeta, and we don't know the name of the other girl. That's the right description, just to get it right. I was just showing this picture next door to somebody, and then he said, oh, that's good, Frederick is explaining how the lamp works. And it just stuck to me, the mindset. No, Frederick is not explaining how the lamp works. He's asking them how they would use the lamp. So the issue here is that we are trying to build out this little startup out of something which we think is sustainable from within the system in Ethiopia in this case. So we are asking them for advice. We're asking them to help us to develop this. This is Samuel, who has a farm. Samuel is outside all day and has a family that works inside in the evening. Everybody in the family either goes to work or goes to school. Samuel said to us, listen, I would like to put it on the stick that I walk around with, so that when I'm standing in my farm working, I either put the stick down like this and it would face the sun, or I would carry the stick around. That's why the edge around it, the design of it, should be something that is adaptable to my stick. This is Samuel working with his wife and the stick standing there. We tried to see what type of shop, what type of kiosk, what type of relationship would people find confidence in? What type of retailer would be reliable? What would people identify with? From there, we sold a lamp to Debre Said. Debre Said, she works in the daytime to get money for kerosene, so that her daughter and son can study. This is her son. If she could work less, she could of course work less making money for kerosene. She would be much happier. She could spend more time with her daughter, and the son wouldn't have to sit next to a kerosene lamp studying. All these informations we take back to our design development, and we are now looking at a prototype which is looking a bit like this. This is a so-called laser sinter thing. We have a bag full of those that we are circulating around and testing in Africa. The solar panel is on the back. When you turn it on, there's not a lot of light in this context here, but it's still 24 times more than from a kerosene lamp. And of course, this is directed so that when you point it at something, it's highly efficient. The aim is here that we can compete with the price of kerosene, which is why we're just now at a price of $9 for a unit, which is the price of 3 weeks of kerosene. And our product, which is a commercial product, our product is going to be working for 3 years with 1,000 chargeable cycles. So obviously we are going to be dependent on you, but not just we. This is Bekalu. He sits in Sachemene. This is his work during the day, and obviously he's now thinking about the potential of working into the night. If he keeps working, he's very happy with his business. He goes out afterwards, making himself up to go down and have a beer. Just things that we could identify with very clearly. And he said, I will keep the lamp hanging next to my mirror, so when looking at myself, I see the lamp as well. Something quite excited there. So the issue here obviously is very simple. I think of this as a project or a work of art. Doesn't really matter, quite honestly, where the light comes from. Obviously it matters what the light falls upon. What is, I think, also central here, this is a tiny startup. We, Frederick and I, we're going to be highly dependent on other people to contribute to this. We are going to be highly dependent on the advice of people like Jamie to get us into a cycle where we can go from low scale into large scale. We start now this summer in Addis and the surrounding areas of Addis. The whole year we will focus on Ethiopia, and we will then go from there to Kenya and Uganda. The idea is, of course, that you start to also find ways to come with advice to us. We are going to need your advice, but we're not going to need the same type of patronizing advice that comes very much out of the Western tradition of thinking about this. We present this project in Africa with an idea of power to the people, something that some of you are old enough to know from a song, I would say. The point is here, the power to the people aspect is that now the grid lightning, the centralized power, comes from the governments, and giving power and teaching and educating what is power, what is the embodiment of power actually mean, how can I record or take down the power into a lamp, and then from there bring it onto my books, bring it into my work, bring it into my little startup industry that I might have in Africa. This equation, I think, is something incredibly inspiring and very exciting. The homepage is up as well. I think I mentioned that, and I want you to go in there and then get back to this email and tell us what you think. Thank you very much.
Olafur, thank you so very, very much. And how incredibly exciting to have this world premiere and launch of this project at DLD. Olafur was telling me before that one cannot make less than, I think, 90 or 100,000 of these lights, and obviously it has only just begun. Now it's the moment to hand over the mic actually to Niklas Heller. I've already introduced Niklas. Niklas will then lead us into the panel within the panel, and we'll speak to Joseph Mucheru and also to Suzanne Machibe. Joseph Mucheru is the regional lead for Google in the Sub-Saharan Africa, based in Nairobi to cover 48 countries. The regional lead function combines planning, running the operations, strategy in Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as also the presence of Suzanne Machibe, who is actually the founder, the inventor, and also the owner of Tanzanite Jet Center. She is a certified commercial pilot and also an aircraft maintenance engineer. Actually, the first woman in Tanzania with both qualification. At present, she runs the Tanzanite Jet Center, which is a very successful fixed-base operation company founded in 2003. A very warm welcome to Niklas Heller, and then to Suzanne Machibe and also Joseph Mucheru.
Thank you. Thank you. So we talked about power, and we've talked about policy. It's time to talk about technology. Well, we've talked about technology actually on a micro scale. Let's take it up to the macro scale. Who here has been on Wi-Fi today? How's it working? 3G? SMS? All right. Voice? All right, we've gone down to the lowest common denominator in the communication cycle. I'm going to talk about Africa. My name's Nick. And I had the privilege of working in Africa for the last several years and helping set up some of our operations there. So let's take a look at Sub-Saharan Africa. Population is huge, close to 750 million, actually over 750 million. 48 countries. It's a beautiful, diverse culture with over 2,000 languages that are spoken. And 45% of those 800 and some odd million have access to a mobile device. And around 72, 73 million, depending on when you count, have access to the internet, mostly via that mobile device. Interestingly, less than 1% of the African population has access to fixed-line internet. And if you compare that to other emerging markets, the average is around 13%. And if you compare that on a global basis, the average is around 19%. So truly in Africa, they've skipped the fixed-line internet, and they moved right to the mobile device. Yet, they all don't have an Android device or an iPhone device. There's many what we would call tier 2, 3 devices that are relatively basic, but still give the population access to the internet. Moreover, you may know that mobile banking has been an absolute revolution in Africa. In Kenya, a service called M-Pesa is now disrupting the entire banking sector and allowing people to bank via their mobile device. So Google focuses on 6 main countries, which actually make up 80% of the total internet population in sub-Saharan Africa. And those 6 countries are Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, and South Africa. But it's not to say it's all optimistic. There are a number of challenges in sub-Saharan Africa. First of all, the internet is relatively slow and expensive. So, is everybody still awake? All right, good. So we track globally the cost of the internet as a percentage of per capita income, normalized for purchasing power parity. And what we've seen, using search as a proxy, is that anything under 2% drives usage. So whether you're getting your internet from your local ISP here in Germany, or you're getting your internet from your local mobile operator in Senegal, if you're spending more than 2% of your monthly income, you're not going to use it all that much. So it's an interesting fact. Price is a major driver of usage. Moreover, in Africa, there are 2,000 languages, as I mentioned. There's a lack of relevant information online. So before you had Translate, when you went to a website, you would go to the website. If you couldn't read it, or if it wasn't relevant to you, it's of no use. So another proxy that we track is the number of high-level domains. So that would be like .de or .ke for Kenya, to the number of people. So the global average is, for every one high-level domain, there's about 94 people. In sub-Saharan Africa, for every one domain, there's about 10,000 people. So what you can see is there's a lack of hosting within Africa, a lack of local domains, lack of relevant content online. So beyond that, there's fragmentation politically and within trade, and in some cases, political instability. So we focus on 2 major initiatives. One is the people that are online, how can we service them the best? And then the people that aren't online, how can we, 1, give them access, 2, make the internet relevant space, and 3, make it sustainable and self-sufficient. So, as it relates to access, Africa is one of the last continents to get linked up to the rest of the world via underwater sea cables. So you can see here in this graphic, these two graphics, some of the underwater sea cables that over the last 10 years have started to land on the continent. And that's really improving the latency issue and also lowering the cost of the bandwidth, the international bandwidth that people have. Have I lost you guys yet? Good, all right, just checking. So although the bandwidth has started to reach the shores and the shoreline of Africa, there's still a challenge about getting that fiber backbone built out in the continent. Traditionally, that was only accessible via satellite, which is a very expensive form of consuming content on the internet. So in many cases, 3G is solving that last mile that we're all using today. When the Wi-Fi wasn't working, we were using 3G. So what does Google do? Well, we set up what's called points of presence, which are the blue dots here on the coast of Africa that put us right to the edge of the network, right to the edge of the fiber cables. And we also set up what's called Google Global Caches, where we cache popular content, like popular YouTube content, within the country. And so that means when a user is accessing YouTube in that country, we'll cache local content that is popular, and it's faster for them, so the user experience is better, but it's also better for the ISPs because they don't have to actually fetch that content internationally, which is expensive. We also have programs with universities across Africa where we support the usage and the training to use Google Apps. So we've launched with 70 universities and have reached over 1 million people with this Google Apps program. But then as it relates to relevance, how do we make it more relevant? As I mentioned, 2,000 plus languages. Africa has 14% of the world's population, but only 2% of internet users. So we really need to give them something, give them a reason to get online. So we've come up with several products and platforms that allow users to actually create content for themselves. And I'm just going to highlight two here. One is a product called Baraza. Baraza allows users to ask questions and answer questions online. And it's available in English and French and Swahili. So users find it very useful to ask a question about health, or ask a question about the internet, or ask a random gossip question. It's quality content online by the users for the users. Similarly, we have a product called Google Trader. Google Trader is a classified site that essentially allows people to post things that they want to sell and search for things that they want to buy. And it's actually been a phenomenal success across Ghana, Nigeria, Uganda, and Kenya. It's giving people a voice to actually sell a lot of their used goods. We also add SMS features to many of our products, such as G+, Google+, which is our social product. We've launched Maps, which access approximately 70% of the local African population. And here's a picture of an elephant in Street View in South Africa, which was launched in 2010. It's probably the only elephant that we know on Street View, because we've actually taken Street View through some of the national parks. Finally, sustainability. Sustainability is about creating an ecosystem that will thrive itself. And we do a number of things there. We focus on outreach, education, and awareness. And we kind of target the top 5 segments, which are consumers, developers, IT professionals, media professionals, and finally, entrepreneurs. We're very proud of a new program that we just launched last year in Cape Town, South Africa, called Mbuno. It's actually an incubator where Google helps the local angel community select good entrepreneurial business plans and then matches the investment that the angels put into those entrepreneurs. And then we provide a space for these entrepreneurs and we help mentor them. And we're looking to expand that program across all of Africa. So we're really trying to communicate and express one, our real commitment to entrepreneurialism, but also to help with the knowledge that we have to the African population. So on that note, it's no doubt that we're going through a relatively tumultuous economic time right now, and that Africa has a major and incredible opportunity, seeing as they're growing so fast. Approximately 40% of Africa's 800 million people is under the age of 15. And you compare that to the US, where it's more of 20% is under the age of 15. That next generation, as the fiber cables are landing and they get online, they're going to drive that next stage of growth for Africa. And it's no doubt they're going to go through tough times, as Europe is going through tough times, and Europe is a major trading partner for them. But we're very optimistic, and you can follow some of the other things we're doing on our blog spot, our Africa blog there. Now, I'm sure I'm extremely entertaining, but I think it would be even better if we had the opportunity to hear from Africa. So I'm really pleased, as Hans mentioned, that we're able to speak to my colleague, Joseph Mucheru, who leads our efforts in Sub-Saharan Africa, who is going to join us live from Nairobi via a Google Plus Hangout, and Susan Mashibi from Tanzania. So, hey, Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Nick.
All right. Welcome to DLD, Joe. Everybody, can you give Joe a round of applause?
All right, thanks, people. Thank you.
Joe, unfortunately, you can't see all the wonderful people in the audience right now, but they can see you. So thanks very much for joining us at DLD. I have a question for you, Joe. I wanted to ask you, how has the internet changed the lives of everyday Africans, and how do you think the internet is going to change the lives of everyday Africans over the next 10 years?
Oh, thanks, Nick. It's a good question. So I consider myself an everyday African. And first, over 10 years ago, I set up an ISP in Kenya and was chairman of the ISP Association and the African ISP Association. So the internet has grown significantly, even though we only have about 9% penetration. What's happening is, I'll talk about those that are using the internet. Starting with the government, many governments have begun publishing information, they've begun giving people data, and even ability to file taxes. So in countries like Kenya, where many people have to queue for filing in their taxes, now most of that can be done online. We're able to see people using maps to be able to get directions, find business listings, be able to actually do even video chats, like we're doing right now. What's interesting is you're able to do that in offices, you're able to do that at home, and for me, I'm also able to do it in my farm near Mount Kenya on my mobile phone, because the mobile phone allows you to do very many things now with the network's availability. The internet itself has become a blend of many services, so it's not only, for instance, used for just social communication, where there's a lot of Facebook and Google Plus being used. There's a lot of YouTube usage for sharing and entertainment. But we're also seeing payments, integrating things like M-Pesa. The other day I was in Lagos and I needed to pay my power bill. And I sent an SMS to find out what my balance is. And from M-Pesa, I'm able to pay that bill so that I don't get power disconnected in my house. So these are the kind of things that ordinary Africans are being able to do with the internet today. What's happening is that we're also seeing a lot of content, a lot of services moving online. And so in the next 10 years, one of the things we're going to see is many, many more users getting online. So right now, smartphones are sub $100, which is great, which means they can have services. Most network operators right now have 3G services, which means we're going to have a large number or hundreds of millions of Africans using the internet, being able to access multiple services. So that, combined with the kind of innovation we've been seeing in the market, which includes payments, which includes all the applications and content that is going online, I expect that ordinary Africans are going to be working online. So we're going to see a lot of jobs being done in the next 10 years via the internet. We're going to see a lot of education being offered via the internet. We're going to hopefully see even elections. We're going to see campaigns happening online. They're happening today, but the more people you have online, the more you're going to see the politicians and everybody wanting to go and offer them those services. I think the key thing the internet is doing and is going to do even more is create an equitable distribution of resources and especially knowledge and access to information. Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for that insight, and it's beautiful to see the bandwidth. Thank you. Round of applause.
Thank you.
It's beautiful to see that the bandwidth has allowed us to communicate in this way. Susan, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hello, Susan. Susan from Tanzania. Susan, you're an accomplished entrepreneur. Can you tell us about some of the challenges and the opportunities for entrepreneurs in Africa?
Yes. First of all, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you what a normal African entrepreneur go through, the challenges they face and the opportunities ahead of us. To start with the challenges, it is still very expensive to do business in Africa. And to start with communication, although now internet is available almost everywhere, it is still very slow and expensive and not easily accessible to everybody. So sometimes it's too slow. It's better to lift up a phone call, to send a fax, than to wait for something to upload or download. So that's one of them. And also just to move from one point in Africa to another. For example, if I want to move from Kilimanjaro in Tanzania to go to Kinshasa in the DRC, sometimes I have to go through Europe to come back to Africa. So we are still so disconnected, and then also makes the cost very high. And also the number one problem in Africa, corruption, makes it very expensive to do business. And lastly, the lack of skills. Africa, 50% of African population is under 27 years old, but the majority of them lack the basic skills. So actually now we are advocating, instead of receiving aid, we want aid to come in form of skills, because now we need skill more than anything so that Africa can compete and can be an equal partner to the world. The opportunities, there's so much opportunity now in Africa because Africa now has the emerging middle class. Africa is now consuming more than it is supplying. Africa cannot supply enough power to meet the demand for Africans. So there is a big demand right there. And also more opportunities that are available because of the emerging middle class in Africa is the normal services. More and more large multinational corporations are setting up businesses in Africa because this is where now there's the most growth. You are going to get the most growth if you invest in Africa now. And as we go to more stability in Africa, peace and stability, at least this part of Africa has been very stable. So we see a bright future. And for 2012, if you set up a simple service now, it's going to grow in folds. That's how I've seen my company doing when we established. And there's more demand, more multinational coming in, they want to use our services, and we are growing, and so many other people who are setting up businesses too are growing up. But so we would like to see more entrepreneurs in Africa, and also we want to see people from outside come to invest in Africa because there's a growth and opportunity. So, so that's it about Africa.
Thank you, Susan. So that's incredible that we were able to link up there on G+. One last point, G+ and Hangouts does not only reach Tanzania and Kenya and Germany. On Monday, after the State of the Union address, President Obama is going to join us for a live Hangout. So please tune in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much to all our speakers. And on this very optimistic note, I think we can open it to the floor and we can take 1 or 2 questions. We are out of time, but there is always time for 1 or 2 questions if there are urgent questions. For Suzanne or Joseph or Nicolas or Jamie or Olafur. Massimo?
Thank you very much. A question for Olafur. Jamie can actually respond as well. So I presume Little Sun is a non-profit venture. So how do you expect to enter such a difficult market such as Africa from a distribution perspective? Have you looked, for example, at similar case study? I mean, Nicolas Negroponte, the founder of MIT, did actually a very good job with 1 laptop for child that he ended up distributing all through Africa. I mean, what's the actual plan?
Well, it is actually not a non-profit project. This is hopefully going to be a profitable project, and it is not a lot of profit, of course, because we need to be incredibly competitive in order to make a strong argument against the kerosene in that sense, but it's based on a normal business model. Obviously, we are, so to speak, the wholesaler, and there is a profit margin for the retailer, meaning the conditions for this project to survive in the market is actually profit-driven. It is not a relief type of work, and our experience has been in our conversations that if they pay for it, they also become innovative. One maybe should think about this as a light bulb. The fact that it's not, we don't deliver it with a foot, or it doesn't come with a string in which it has to hang. Maybe there could be a small business making foots. Maybe there's a business making attachable things so you can put it on the bicycle. Maybe there's a business making the strings, just like we have on around our mobile phones and so on. So the conditions for this are very much based on the local initiatives and the sort of creative entrepreneuring in the markets. Still, though, we aim to be so incredibly cheap that we get strong presence right away.
Maybe if I could just quickly add, it varies from country to country, right? And some have better regulatory environments, more conducive. It'd be great to hear, maybe if, I don't know if Juliana, you have an interesting answer to this question, or anyone on the line, Suzanne or Joseph. But we're aware of a number of companies that are actually doing very well and not subsidized. So with a bit more infrastructure, with a bit more marketing, and with a bit more investment, this can take off. It just feels like it's at that cusp. But I just want to know, maybe... yeah,
we've got a question.
This is a bit anarchic, but, you know, maybe there's a...
Can we have a mic here? There is a question here. Thank you. And this will be the very last question because we're out of time.
Thanks, Jamie. Just to respond to the question about OLPC. Sure. Hello, everyone. Just to respond to the question about OLPC, I think there is a really big market for the 313 million middle-class Africans. So that ties into my question for Olafur Eliasson. Are you looking at other designs that can tap into the 313 million middle-class users who have a more aspirational view and probably a bit more cosmopolitan, and also have to deal with brownouts? And also, Nick, if you could also mention if you have some products or things that are geared towards small businesses or sort of this other Africa that we don't hear about.
Yes, we're looking at this project with the light as a very good story to understand that you can actually take power yourself and take that power and use it for something, to turn it over into something else. Meaning light has a great ability to create a relationship with working in the evening, which would otherwise not be possible. The other projects or the other products we are thinking of and drawing at the moment is a mobile charger. And the next one is an FM radio. It's a very small, little, nice, little sun. And after that, of course, there is a battery charger. And then it goes on, because then, of course, the next project is then a slightly bigger lamp. And then there is the lamp which only charges, let's say, for one day to run for a whole week, which is a more expensive type of technology. So there is a whole range of things that could then be aimed at different types of use. The situation is, though, that the greater challenge is to get a retail infrastructure built up. We've spoken now to banks, to gasoline infrastructure, and other types of distribution networks where we see a relationship from, let's say, a wholesaler to a market consumer. And it seems that the more flexible we make the project, the easier we will get a story to or narrative to kind of take the product to the market. This means that we will use the light as a sort of carrier, and then we'll see if we can build up a relationship with the market based on that. And from there we go into radio and chargers as the next thing. Currently this is maybe details, there's currently 6 million mobile phones in Ethiopia. 5 million of those are actually in the grid, and 1 million is off the grid. So for instance, in Ethiopia, there's only 1 million phones in the need of a charger, which doesn't really create a favorable market situation for us yet, considering that it is a market-driven idea. But within 4 years, that has increased to 12 million. But the electric grid has only reached out to 2 million more. So suddenly in 3 years, there's a very strong market for a mobile phone charger. So obviously we aim to be there then. And then again, we talk about the continent as if all the comments are similar. They're so different. There's huge differences between each continent, or each country, as you know, of course.
Thank you so very much. Many thanks to Susan, to Joseph, to Nicholas, to Jamie, to Olafur, and to all of you. Thanks so much.